Hey, and we are live. Welcome everybody to Hump Day Hangouts. This is the second day of March 2022. We got our first Hump Day Hangouts of March, and we're going to say hello to the guys real quick before we jump into questions. Looks like we got a couple really good ones today, and we'll give you a minute to get your questions on the page. So, Chris, how you doing today, man?
Doing good here. Yeah, like weather is springtime, really good. Can't complain. And yeah, I'm super excited today because on Saturday I will be going snowboarding to the mountains and stuff. So it's been a while, I would say it that way.
Nice. And, well, yeah, it looks like I think everyone's taken off. I know you're going skiing. Bradley's going. Bradley, I assume you're going like ATV stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. And then I'm going to be headed out doing some hiking and kayaking. So this is good, man. Maybe we should do this stuff together sometime. Is that...
It's definitely springtime. It must be because we're all doing outdoorsy shit.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's cool. Bradley, how you doing today?
Good, man. Happy to be here. Just finished the mastermind webinar. I had to move it up a day early because I'm going out of town.
Yep.
But that went well. Unfortunately, anybody that was trying to watch the the Syndication Academy update webinar, Essie and I were closing each other out on Zoom because we didn't know that that was the same account. And anyway, it was just funny because she just sent me a message in Slack. It was like, I don't know what happened, but Zoom shut me out. I was like, oh shit. so if her live webinar got missed, she just recorded the training and she'll be uploading it to the Syndication Academy members area in the Facebook group. So you guys can catch it there. And I apologize for that. That was a miscommunication on my part. So
it happens. And yeah, that's good. So we're getting everyone taken care of it. Like Bradley said, it's going to record that and post that. And Bradley mentioned the mastermind too, and this is my not so subtle pitch of, also mastermind members get free access to the Syndication Academy, which is what we were talking about just now. And do want to say too, I know Bradley was talking about some of the onboarding calls you've had with new mastermind members, and how you've been working through those and helping people, really identify what it is they need to be doing, and what kind of the next steps are. So that's what we do with new mastermind members. It's definitely a peer group. It's helping you, whether you're an agency owner, consultant, whether you're doing lead gen or you have a brick and mortar. But part of it is helping you and finding out more about you and what your specific situation is. We've got people with small agencies, we've got single consultants, we've got people with large agencies. And while a lot of this stuff applies, there is uniqueness to each of that. And we really do want to find out about each mastermind member and how we can help them the most. So if you are not a part of the mastermind, but you've been thinking about it or you've heard about it, or you're just now hearing about it and think that this might be something for you, you can find out more about that at mastermind.semanticmastery.com. And something else I wanted to touch on, because mostly I just want to post a picture. We got a webinar coming up on, I believe it's this coming Monday. And Bradley is going to be sitting down with Jeremy, Press Advantage, and going over some of the big updates for 2022, what's going on with Press Advantage. Jeremy's had a lot of cool stuff going on, so wanted to sit down with him and talk through that. And I believe Jeremy's also going to have a bonus for anybody who not only is already a customer of Press Advantage, but also for anyone who decides to join after that. But highly suggest checking that out. Jeremy's always full of really good information and really shares it all. So I will post the link to that so everybody can get signed up.
You got to post that meme
in the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So will there be any new strategies revealed? Maybe.
I don't want to spill the blaze, but there might be some information about link building updates to Press Advantage. Maybe some new packages out there. Yeah, there's going to be some good stuff. I'm going to grab that image. Did you guys have anything else? I think that was all the stuff I wanted to cover. I think we're pretty much ready to get into it if you guys are.
Yeah, I am. Because if we can finish all the questions early enough.
Bradley, head out.
I'm getting the fuck out of here, man.
All right, let's jump into it.
Yeah, motorboating.
I'm anxious to get out, man. I was telling my mastermind members that, since December, last time I went on any sort of like trip or anything like that was the first weekend in December. And since then I work 12 days on, 2 days off, 12 days on, 2 days off. Cause I get my daughter every other weekend. So when I have her, I don't work, but other than that, I've been working 7 days a week, anywhere between 12 to 15 hours a day. No shit. That is not a lie. And like since the first weekend in December. So I'm really looking forward to taking a couple of days off. I think it is much needed. But I always tell other people too, like, everybody should do that. Occasionally just take away, go. And when I go away tonight, I'm unplugging, like, you won't be able to get a hold of me. You know what I mean? And I think that's important, is to do that, to kind of like decompress and allow yourself some headroom, like headspace to kind of like think things through. And I always come back so much more refreshed and ready to, like, I'm so much more productive after a couple of days off like that. And I encourage others to try to do that too, whether it's whatever it is that makes you happy. Just go do it and unplug, get the hell away from social media and everything else, emails, all of that, anyway.
Definitely.
All right, let's get into it. All right, so where's the first one?
Let me scroll up here. I was getting ready to post the picture. I believe it's Geoff, I think, unless you answered that last time.
Jeff, yeah.
Jeff? Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I think this one I did not get answered last week, and then I can pick up from there. I believe that's probably a good spot right there.
Cool.
So that was Adam reposted from YouTube. Bradley, interesting work you are doing with using expired domains for backlinks to power up Google properties. Do you take into consideration that using separate servers for each domain build out? Okay, yeah. So this wasn't a follow-up question that I know did not get answered last week. It was right at the end of the webinar. And that was in regards to the link building service that I'm, my link building methods now, which I provide as a service also for mastermind members. But I teach on how to do it too in the mastermind. But that is where I go out and scrape domains. I've got 3 domain crawlers now that are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I just got my 3rd one yesterday, actually, that are scraping for domains, finding expired domains. And I do it by top level categories. I've got one scraping legal sites, because I've got several legal type clients. I've got one scraping health sites for dentists and chiropractors and physician stuff. And then I've got another one scraping for business domains, which covers all contractors and everything else. So what I do is go out and find expired domains that are topically relevant to the project that I need them for. And then we go register those domains. The metric that I care about, I don't care about referring to, they got to have a minimum of 5 referring domains. But like a lot of the other metrics, Moz, and like all the Ahrefs metrics like DR and all that, I don't give a shit about those. I don't care at all about those metrics. What I care about is topical relevance, and Majestic is the only tool that I know of that measures topical relevance of links. And so what I do is I go try to hunt down domains that are topically relevant, not just the page, but the entire domain that is in the appropriate topical trust flow category, which is not always accurate, but it's close. It's a pretty good indicator that the site itself was topically relevant. And so that's what I do is I go hunt down those domains that can be registered for the cost of registration, that were topically relevant to the project that I need them for. And then I register them, and we build HTML sites, simple single page HTML sites that link to their intended target, not PBNs. I'm not posting 8,000 articles on it. I don't do that. It dilutes the power of any one link. So what I do is rebuild that domain specifically for one client, one project. And then I link to that project with an HTML page with well-developed content that's relevant. And that's it. And it's been working great. I've got, like, my entire link building business is now focused around doing just that. And it's been working good. So as far as hosting them on different servers, I'm using Terry Kyle's cloudboss.pro, which is great for this stuff, for HTML sites. Mainly, I mean, you can also do stuff with CMSs and WordPress and stuff, but that's not what I'm doing, because I'm not doing PBNs. There's no need for that. I just do HTML sites, single page sites. And cloudboss.pro is really good for that, because it connects with Amazon S3 and Rackspace. There's different levels you can get. So the number of sites that you can host. Amazon S3, you can attach as many accounts as you want to that, however many accounts you have. And it also integrates with some other cloud hosting providers, or cloud like VPSs, essentially, like DigitalOcean, Vultr, Linode, Joyent, a couple of those others. Although there's been some issues recently, I've been working with Terry Kyle, the developer and the owner, to get some of those resolved. DigitalOcean is working now. Vultr is sometimes working, sometimes not. But so yes, I use different servers, as well as S3 has dozens of IPs depending on which data center you use. Rackspace has only about 6 or 8 data centers. But then you can also do things like use Cloudflare, which, Cloudflare gives you a whole nother set of IPs, and IP blocks or ranges as well. So there's, you can be quite diverse using just that and that alone. And then each time, like, for example, DigitalOcean, I think there's like 11 different data centers there. And so you can actually set up different VPSs with it through DigitalOcean, for example, or Vultr is the same thing, that connect. And so you can have multiple VPSs connected to CloudBoss. And each time you create a new instance, a new VPS, even if it's in the same data center, it will oftentimes generate a completely different, it's a unique IP. So it ends up being, you get IP diversity too. So yes, absolutely. As Jeremy though we were just talking about Jeremy from Press Advantage, he was saying in one of our threads in Mastermind that the IP diversity isn't quite like isn't quite the requirement like it was, or as necessary as it was several years ago, because of things like Cloudflare and stuff like that, where it's a block of an IP range that they have that, I mean, millions of websites are on now. So it does help certainly to have some IP diversity. There's no question, but it's not quite as critical as it was years ago, before there were a lot of these like DNS providers, and reverse proxies and that kind of stuff, reverse DNS and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, you can certainly get a very wide range of IPs using just the integrations that are available, and in some tweaking methods within those integrations as well. So it was a good question. Erlen says, what are your top 10 ranking strategies for 24 to 48 hour rankings? Don't worry about competition, just straight up ranking. Go. 24 to 48 hours. Well, YouTube's still always a good thing. There are certain Web 2s that will rank very, very quickly still. So I don't know. Blogger can rank. Google sites, it's hit or miss. Google sites sometimes will rank very quickly. Other times they'll rank, but they're going to take a few weeks and some link building for it to work. I've had Blogger rank very, very quickly. Patch.com, which you can publish classified announcement posts on, which it will actually publish in Google News. Those will rank rather quickly, not 24 to 40. I mean, it depends on the keyword, certainly, but in some competitive areas, even competitive keywords, I can typically get a patch article to rank, and within about 30 days. You can spam the shit out of that, by the way. I mean, I don't usually use bulk spam anymore at all, but you can with patch. There's a particular gig I use on Fiverr that's just comment spam, blog comment spam, that it's like 75,000 blog comments delivered in like 3 days. And that works wonders. It's like magic with those patch.com classified announcement posts. It works, almost every time. And it ranks it very, very quickly. So Web 2s, some press release stuff you can do that with for sure. I don't know. 24 to 48 hours. I usually don't count on that. Even YouTube, I don't usually count on that. If it happens, it's an added bonus, but I don't usually expect to see something to rank that quick, but sometimes you get lucky. Rahul says, hey guys, wondering how you would approach bulk registering social profiles when buying up lots of expired domains. I don't. I mean, I haven't approached it yet, so I don't really have an answer for that, Rahul. I'm just publishing HTML sites. I'm not doing build outs of social profiles around them and everything else. They're basically like long form articles, like independent long form articles being published. And then I do tier 2 link building to that. So they're not just orphaned. Well, they're not orphaned anyways, because they got inbound links to them, or else they wouldn't have topical trust flow metrics. And I require a minimum of 5 referring domains, or I won't purchase the domain. So they're not orphaned in the, I mean, I guess they're orphaned because they don't have internal pages and all that other stuff, but they have inbound links pointing to them. And so I don't really need, I'm not doing social profiles on those. PBN stuff, whenever I used to, I don't do PBNs anymore, but when I used to, I would absolutely build syndication networks around them and social profiles and everything to make them look super real. But I'm just basically publishing like standalone articles on HTML pages. And just the same as what people talk when they say cloud stacking and all that. I'm doing the cloud stacking method, but instead of hosting the page on the cloud hosting domain, like the bucket URL, essentially, I'm using rebuilt or expired domains that already have inbound links and, were topically relevant to what I need them for and then I register the domain, and then that ends up pointing to the cloud host. So it's the domain that resolves, not the bucket, if that makes sense. You still have a bucket URL, by the way, which is why I always add a canonical tag in the top of the HTML page that points to the domain, the rebuilt domain, instead, so that there's not, you know, two versions of that could both potentially be indexed and be a duplicate, right? So I always add a canonical tag so that the cloud hosted page, so the bucket URL version of it, if Google crawls that, will recognize the user declared canonical. If you notice in Search Console, there's always that field when you do URL inspection. The user declared canonical will point to the HTML page on the domain that I rebuilt, if that makes sense. So it pushes the credit to there, which, by the way, you can do some pretty ninja stuff with tier 2 links when you build links to the bucket URL that's canonicalized to the domain URL, and it makes it hard for people to detect those backlinks, but it still pushes the credit over there. So pretty cool stuff you can do. Chad says, hey guys, is it true that syndicating new blog posts from the money site to tier 1s no longer works on its own unless you also add additional unique content to each syndication property? Or is a guy on Fiverr just trying to sell me on buying more content? Yeah, he's just trying to sell you on buying more content. It absolutely still works. If it didn't work, it works, right? You can syndicate content to your branded profiles, right? So yes, it still works. That's certainly a marketing gimmick on his part, and good for him. But yeah, I mean, as far as do you get the ranking benefit that you did? I mean, no, the syndication networks don't work like they did 10 years ago. There's no question. And I think we launched that course in 2014, maybe. Syndication, it was called IFTTT SEO Academy then, but we got a cease and desist order from IFTTT SEO or IFTTT.com about a year and a half after we launched the course. Their lawyers are contacted us and said, stop using our name. So we called it Syndication Academy. But when I started doing that method was back in 2012. And so that was 10 years ago. And it worked like crazy then. It would rank shit just by publishing content that would syndicate out to the network. But over the years, it's changed, right? It's evolved. And I've talked about this many times in the last few weeks. Because of IFTTT now, only like, unless you have a paid account, you can only use, I think 3 or maybe it's 5, but I think it's 3 live applets with a free account. And so all I do is I will publish to Tumblr, WordPress, and then usually the Facebook page and or Twitter, but you can also connect, some other apps that will cross post to those as well. So I'm usually just for most of the tree service stuff that I do, it's just to the Tumblr blog, the WordPress blog, and the company's Facebook page, and that's it. And so as far as syndicating, you know, where I think the syndication networks are still the most valuable is it expands the entity footprint. They're interlinked branded profiles that help to solidify or validate the entity. And I've talked about this, like I said, a lot over the last few weeks, is that it's like Syndication Academy originally was about syndicating, and now it isn't as much about syndicating. Yes, you can still do that. And if you have a paid account with IFTTT, then you can add, you know, as many applets as you want. And so you can syndicate to your heart's content. But where the value is with the SEO is still, even without the syndication, is constantly adding additional branded profiles, which is like adding nodes to the knowledge graph for your brand, if that makes sense. And interlinking where possible, not in any particular pattern. You don't want to do patterns, but just kind of randomly interlinking between other available branded profiles. It creates, like I said, like this 3-dimensional geometric, I should say, shape that is the knowledge graph for that brand or that entity. And so constantly expanding that footprint by adding nodes to it, which means adding additional branded profiles and interlinking so that it makes the association, the connection between other branded profiles, helps the SEO. It helps strengthen the brand. And that's where it's very valuable. So whether you syndicate or not, it's really not all that important, in my opinion. But purely on the syndication level, think about it. Companies that produce content on their blog, what do? They go share that blog content, or the URL at least, on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. Are they adding additional content when they do it? No, they're sharing the link to their content. So the guy on Fiverr is using a gimmick to try to sell more, an upgrade or an add-on or whatever, and good for him. But you were wise to come ask that question, because no, that's not necessary. Can you still syndicate just content? Yes. Will it still work? Yes. Does it have the same kind of SEO effect that it did 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 6 years ago? No. but branded network profiles do. And again, that it just over time and time again, I've seen that. It's very, very powerful. Okay. Patrick from Miami says, question for Bradley: what would happen if you added affiliate CPA banners with the banner links set to no follow to your expired domain rebuilds? Would it compromise using them for backlink purposes? No, it shouldn't. That's a good idea. One of the things I do with my, now this wouldn't, for your purposes, if you're getting real traffic to those expired domain rebuilds, then yeah, absolutely, why not? Because then you can monetize it, right? You get, you know, you could even do list building, put a form on there, right? Like an affiliate offer and all that kind of stuff. You could build lists and everything else. Now, the sites that I'm rebuilding, I'm not technically trying to rank those rebuilt pages. I'm using them for SEO purposes, but I do run CTR, click-through traffic. So I'm doing click-through manipulation through those because I do run traffic through all my tier 1 rebuilds so that my clients' target assets are getting referral traffic through those links, which makes those links that much more valuable. So in other words, if I build, you know, like 6 rebuilt domains as tier 1 links, and they're linking to the 3 tier 0 assets, which would be the location landing page or the money site, the Google business website, and the Google map, right? Those are what I call the 3 tier 0 assets. Then I'll set up CT click-through manipulation campaigns that will go visit the HTML pages, find one of the links, it just does it randomly, one of the links on the page, money site, GB website, or GB map, and click through that link and then dwell on that page. And, you know, sometimes depending on what settings I have, it'll go click through another link on that page. So an internal page on the money site, or click a GB post on the Google business website, or click the tap to call button or something like that on the Google map. So it's a referral engagement signal. Because here's the thing, guys, links atrophy over time. If they have no engagement, no activity on them, they can atrophy over time, right? Which means they become less valuable over time if there's no activity signals. Or click activity, basically. If the page itself is not receiving traffic that the link is on, then it can't get any click activity, and that link becomes less valuable over time. I don't know at which rate, the link decay, I don't know which, I'm sure it probably varies depending on, depending on you know, the site itself, like how much traffic the site gets, and all kinds of other variables. But if the page is getting traffic, then that link will atrophy slower, even if it's not getting click activity, because the page itself is receiving traffic. But if you can get click-through activity from the page receiving traffic, and in a percentage of at least of the traffic that it receives clicks through that link remains stronger, right? It doesn't lose its value. So that's why I do that. It's just kind of an ad, and that doesn't cost anything extra for my link building clients. I just do it on tier 1 links that I rebuild, or my rebuilt domains. We send click-through activity through those links, makes them more valuable. So anyway, yeah, do that. I mean, if it's no follow, it won't bleed any SEO juice, right? So there's no reason why you couldn't do that. If you're getting real, and by the way, you could try to rank those pages. We're just doing it strictly for the link purpose. But if you put a really well-tuned article on there, like, you know, you do your research and you develop a really well-tuned article for whatever keyword is you're targeting, or go after long tail stuff, right? Develop the article for those rebuilds. Just a single site, single page HTML site's all you need, but you could develop an article for some of those long tails that is really well-tuned, that can rank for long tail, that could potentially generate real natural organic traffic. So why not? Why not put banners on that, or affiliate offers, or whatever? That's a great idea. Good question. Gordon says, hey guys, I just need your feedback on 2 quick questions. One, you had mentioned previously that when trying to get a rank and rent multi-city local lead gen site to Google's first page, we should not use the actual phone number from a potential client in each city because the forwarding numbers, but use forwarding numbers instead, as Google knows who owns most business phone numbers. But since many forwarding numbers you can rent have been rented to others before, don't you still run the risk of Google realizing that another business owns that number and de-indexing your site or page? I've never worried about that, Gordon. And it's funny because sometimes you'll rent a number, virtual phone number, and you'll get calls from its previous use. Like, in other words, like, people will call that number because it was used for a business previous, and then it was dropped. and it was available for registration again, just like domains, right? It's the same thing. So sometimes my forwarding or virtual phone numbers that I use for tree service stuff will get calls for people looking for insurance quotes or whatever, like car insurance quotes and stuff like that. And it happens, but I've never worried about Google de-indexing any of it. I've never seen that, never heard of it. So I think that's a what if scenario that you don't really need to worry about. I've not experienced that. And I know that some of the numbers I have used have been used for businesses, previous to mine, because all my calls go into a call center, and occasionally we'll get this weird message from my call center, like this, whatever the contact's name was, calling to Clara. We just got one last week. I'm not kidding. That was like, it must've been a graphic design company. And the caller was calling from a restaurant, like a restaurant owner, because they were the message that I got from one of my tree service sites, again, that came from my call center. The message was like, it was a lady's name, called to ask about her menu designs. And like, there was this whole big paragraph that this lady must have like kept, talking about like what she was calling about. And she wanted to get, wanted to talk about her menu designs and all this kind of stuff. And I just looked at it and kind of giggled, and just deleted that lead, because obviously she was calling a number that had apparently been, or maybe it was just a wrong number, but it was likely that it had been assigned to a graphic design company or something, if that makes sense. So yeah, it can happen, but I wouldn't worry about de-indexing or anything like that. I've never seen that. Is it just minimal at best, or is there any significant SEO ranking benefit to using particular website hosting providers versus other hosting providers? And if so, what is the benefit? Okay, yes, that's a great question, Gordon. Yeah, if you are using, it doesn't have to be just a cheap host, a budget host. That's typically where you're going to see the most problems. But neighborhood checker. So you can even Google that. Like, if you know the IP of a server that you're going to be using for on a shared hosting account, you can go just Google like IP neighborhood checkers. Trust me, just go Google something like IP neighborhood checkers, and there will come up with a list of sites. And you can just go take the IP from the shared hosting account that you're planning on using or that you already have and plug it in there, and it will show you all the sites that are using that IP. And so, yes, you can absolutely be associated on a dirty IP because of other websites, which is why budget shared hosting is never a good idea when you're trying to rank sites. Seriously, guys, I just don't ever recommend it. There's so many issues with budget shared hosting that you just shouldn't do it. My favorite provider for shared hosting is WPX. They're really, really good. That's owned by Terry Kyle. He's been around for a very long time. He's the same that owns CloudBoss. I was just talking about CloudBoss earlier in this Hump to Hangout. And WPX has been phenomenal for me. I've been using them for 3.5, maybe 4 years now. Their support is unmatched. They have they have their own CDN that they built. So their sites are incredibly fast. WordPress sites, like I said, their support is phenomenal. I've never waited more than about 60 seconds to get replies for support ever, no matter what time of day or night. So they're phenomenal. And but yeah, I mean, even then, go check the IP, go use a neighborhood checker and see an IP neighborhood checker and look and see if you got a bunch of spammy sites on that IP, or sites like a lot of budget hosts will overload an IP with too many shared, and that's all shared resources, shared bandwidth. So if any one site's getting a bunch of traffic, then it's going to make all the other sites slow to respond or non-responsive at all, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's definitely a benefit to it. That's why if you're running a site that gets a lot of traffic and is very important, it's very lucrative, you should have like your own kind of like cloud server with its own dedicated IP. Anybody want to comment on that, by the way?
No, sir.
Okay. All good.
Okay, moving on. BB, good evening. What's up, BB? He said, do you ever sold someone digitally with, do you ever sell somebody digitally without email opt-in? What are the percentage of doing that? You mean send traffic direct to a sales page without an opt-in in between? Yeah,
sure.
We have. Adam, can you?
Yeah, I can't give you, which is kind of hilarious. I realized I was about to say I can give you e-commerce stats, but not for our own business. I don't track it that granularly outside of it. For an example, like e-commerce, anywhere from 1 to 5. one being definitely on the low side, 1 to 5% conversion rate. And you just use email opt-in generally to clean up for people who were going to either exit or maybe were looking for something else. So I'm a huge believer in email, so definitely go that route, and it can be a great lead magnet, right, to get people to opt in and then follow up with them. But if the offer's right and people want to buy it, don't stop them.
Yeah, I agree. The benefit of trying to capture a email is so that you can continue to market to them if they don't purchase now, but you can do that with remarketing or retargeting as well, which is, at the very least, you should be doing that. If you're sending traffic to a page without a capture, an email capture, an opt-in, then you should have at least a remarketing tag in Google. If it's Facebook, which I don't do Facebook, but if you did, that's retargeting. But so that way you can at least follow them around with additional advertisements. But yeah. Do you do client SEO for regular businesses and not for marketers, guys, or just focus on lead gen? Yeah, I've got clients. I've got clients. I've got clients across many different industries. Still, all I take on new clients is just in the as far as like agency clients is just in the tree care industries, tree service contractors. But yeah, I've got clients, and I still do lead gen, and I've got clients in other industries like roofers and pest control and stuff like that I've had for years. And then I take on link building clients from that across any industry, really, local link building clients, because link building is link building. It doesn't matter what the industry is. So, but yeah, as far as do I do SEO for clients? Yeah, but just in the last year and a half, all I will take on for agency clients are tree service contractors, and to a lesser degree, landscapers, if they also offer tree services, if that makes sense. What is the percentage of those, and why is it the way you choose to do it to be? Well, I prefer lead gen over client work because clients are a pain in the ass. Also because when you're doing client work, you're receiving a monthly retainer to build their business and their assets. When they decide that they don't want you anymore, they stop paying you, and all your work has been transferred to them. They continue to reap benefits from your work when you don't continue to get paid. So I prefer lead gen because those are assets that I create and control. Those are mine. And if I have a lead buyer or somebody on a rank and rent, like leasing an asset, which I only have a couple of those that are like old stuff. I don't really do that anymore, but I do pay per lead or revenue share models on my lead gen side of the business. And I prefer that because I own and control those assets. So I put all the work into them. If somebody wants to stop paying me, great. Piss off. Don't let the door hit you on the way. You know what I mean? But because then I can just go remonetize that asset with a new link, a lead buyer, tree service provider, whatever, if that makes sense. So I prefer the lead gen model. And I also like link building clients because they're the ones that go out and get the clients, and then they just outsource their link building to me, and I just do the link building, which I really enjoy doing. So I love that part of the business. But client work, I'm not crazy about it, but I will certainly still do it. I actually start prospecting next week again. I hired a cold caller to do cold call prospecting next week from March 8th through the 12th. I rented a caller for a week, and that's, I'm going to get a bunch of appointments hopefully set for to pitch reputation building services for $100 a month to tree service contractors. And then if I, whatever, that's basically a client. And then from there, I'll have conversations with them and try to upsell them on Google SEO, Google Business SEO, and or lead generation, depending on what the conversation, which way the conversation goes. I just met with a tree service contractor last week, a local guy. He's been buying leads from me for over a year. I just mentioned this on the mastermind webinar today. He'd been buying leads from me for over a year, and he called me last week and asked me if I could, what do you charge to build me a Google presence? And so I quoted him over the phone, but I said, look, let's meet in person, because he's kind of a local guy. I was like, let's meet in person. I got something I want to propose to you. So we met last week on Tuesday. And since he had been buying leads from me on a pay-per-lead basis for over a year, I offered him and he won, I quoted him at $850 a month to do just Google Business SEO, no website. If he wanted a website, that would be separate. But I told him hey, here's the opportunity, man. I know you, we've been communicating for over a year. You've been buying leads from me. I've got 4 lead generation. Well, at the time we had the conversation initially, there was 3 lead generation assets that were in his local area that were mine. And I said, I'll send you all those leads, 100% exclusive to you, but you give me 10% of any closed job. and you have to pay me $100 a month to use my app, which is a high level sub account. That's an app that I developed in high level that tracks all the leads. It's a lead management app essentially. And he was like, yeah, man, that's great. Cause I was like, hey, you don't have to pay me $850 a month. You don't have to pay me a damn thing except $100 a month to use my app. And then I'll generate all the leads. These are all my assets. And he was much happier with that than paying me $850 a month to do Google Business SEO for him. I told him, look, once you start making money from my leads, if you want me to build you a presence, I certainly can. And he was like, nah, I just want the work. And that's how most contractors are. They really don't give a shit. They just want the work. And so I prefer lead gen over agency work any day of the week. But I will not turn away agency work either, if it's the appropriate type. It's a good question, BB. Vance, hey, Gents, in your experience, what is the best long tail keyword structure for ranking? Location plus keyword or keyword plus location? Well, natural language patterns would be location plus keyword, right? I typically focus on the other way around for SEO though, which is keyword plus location. So like tree service plus city is how most people search. Although it's going a lot more towards just tree service, keyword near me. It's going a lot more towards that. But, natural language patterns is city plus keyword, right? It makes more sense to say Culpeper tree service than tree service Culpeper. Does that make sense? So, again, as far as ranking, I tend to try to target the keyword as usually because that's the way, most people still search other than with near me terms would be like keyword plus location. But if I'm going to title, like if I was going to create a generic brand, like over like an exact match keyword, I would do it city plus keyword. Does that make sense? Because it's more natural sounding. Although I've started building like my link building service, I don't build links with just exact match. I mean, I still do exact match keywords, but I include stop words like in, of, that kind of stuff. Whereas before I didn't used to. Like, so for example, tree service Culpeper, if that was what I was targeting in my link building service, I would be building links with like tree service in Culpeper, VA or Culpeper, Virginia, or like company name of Culpeper, right? Or something like that. So that whereas before I didn't used to ever include those, but I am now because Google's NLP, right? Natural language processor is so much more advanced now. It understands language. So I don't like to build links with just straight up keywords anymore. I still use exact match anchors, but I include the stop words that make them natural sounding, like we would speak, natural language patterns, right? That's a good question, but yeah. He said, I just took an electrician as a client and also need to add commercial and residential in there as well. Thank you in advance. Yeah, I mean, again, for title tags and things like that, I'll still put like SEO titles. I'll still put it the way that people search. So like I'll put tree service Culpeper VA, for example, or tree removal, Richmond VA or something like that in the title tag. But in the content, when we optimize content, I try to include the stop words to make it read naturally. And then also in the inbound link profile. So for anchor text for inbound links, do the same thing. I put it to where it reads naturally because Google understands, their natural language processor understands our speech, like it understands the English language very well. So there's no need to target it on an exact match like level anymore because I think that's unnatural, if that makes sense. Vance, I know this is your name here, but I know you're in the mastermind. So anytime you have questions you want answered much more in depth, man, use the mastermind Facebook group. We can get into it real deep there. Okay, we're almost done. Vance says, do blog or page tags still have any SEO value? How about site tags? The site tags URL. Thank you. I think what you're talking about when you say site tags URL is like tag page URLs. Yeah, they still have value if you know how to use them. I mean, you can do some really ninja stuff with tag pages and tags and everything else. But you also know you have to be careful because like if you publish a post in WordPress by default, if you add a tag, it publishes a tag page. And the only difference is in the URL, there will be /tag, /tag/, and in the same keyword, whatever keyword you use for the tag. So unless you are going to use the same tag across multiple posts, you should never have a unique tag. Like what I mean by that is you should never have one tag that is only associated with one post, because then it creates a duplicate page. And depending on your WordPress theme or the settings, somewhat the tag pages sometimes will be the full post. Sometimes it will just be a summary, like a a snippet or essentially. But if it's the full page or the full post, then and all you have is a single tag, then it's basically you have two versions of that post: the original post, original URL, and then you have the tag page URL, which also has the post, and it's an exact copy. Now, it's not a duplicate content; it's the original and the copy, but they can cannibalize each other. They can compete with each other. So what I'm trying to say is, if you are going to use tags, be aware of that. Make sure that you're using tags across more than one post, so that you don't ever have a unique tag. Because if you have two posts with one tag, now the tag page is going to have both posts. So that page itself is unique compared to the original post of either one of those original posts, if that makes sense, because it's the page itself now has two posts on it, the tag page, I mean. So, but if you're going to use tags if you want to use tags and you're not comfortable with that because you're not sure, if you got single tags out there that are creating copies of an original post, then just no index the tags. And that's usually in just about every one of the SEO plugins. You can no index tags and tag archives and categories and all that other stuff. But you can do some really ninja stuff with tags too, if you know what you're doing. And we talk about that, Vance, in the mastermind. Although I have been doing a lot of stuff with tag pages that overcomplicated site builds that was completely unnecessary. I don't recommend doing that. I talk about this in the mastermind all the time. Keep your website as simple as possible. Keep it simple, stupid, right? The KISS strategy for website building is the best, in my opinion. Keep it simple. Keep the site architecture clean and simple, not real deep with a bunch of silo stuff if not needed. In some cases you need it, but very rarely for local businesses do you need a real complex silo architecture. A lot of the times you just keep it simple. It's much easier to manage. It's easier to push internal link jokes around the site. So I would recommend trying to keep it simple. Okay. Vance says, I read somewhere on that I can index G site URLs through Search Console. Is that true? Yeah. Yes, because if you have the Google site connected to the same account as the Search Console, in the settings, and the old sites in the settings, you could add the HTML code, the HTML tag for verification. I think now in the new ones, it's in my SOP, but I haven't. It's in my SOP, Vance, in the mastermind, the GBP SOP. It's in there because I talk about adding the sites to Search Console. But anyway, I think with the new sites, all you have to do is go to Search Console and add it as a URL property, not a domain property, but as a URL prefix in Search Console. And as long as it's the same account as the G site was created under, that it will auto verify it. And so, yes, you can add G sites to Search Console. All right, I think this is the last question. Bug says, I've asked this before about silo structure, and your answer was to keep it simple, but this ignores the issue of the blog on an e-commerce site. So should you try to integrate topic categories in blogs with the product categories in an e-commerce site? Yeah. I don't do any e-commerce stuff. I never have, but I had consulted with some e-commerce people like 5 or 6 years ago. I don't anymore, but and that's what we would suggest back then. I don't know if that's changed. I can't imagine it would have, but what I would, if you have like a blog on a subdomain, for example, or even if it's part of the e-commerce site, if you have blog categories, you should basically, canonicalize those or redirect those or whatever, create like a mirrored structure for each product category that you have on the site. You could have a category like a blog category on the site for blog posts, if that makes sense. And what we would recommend back then was to like redirect the category URL. So like domain, blog subdomain. So the subdomain on the blog dot, whatever the domain was, /category/ whatever the category name was, would redirect that category URL to the e-commerce category on that site, if that makes sense. And that way, any of the blog posts that you would publish within that category, the taxonomy structure, right, would because the internal links in WordPress would show the category. And so all the link juice from those blog posts would flow through those category URLs up through, that would then be redirected to the category page on the e-commerce site, right? So it's basically pushing topical relevance and internal link juice to the category pages on the e-com site through the blog, if that makes sense. So it's a mirrored structure. We've been talking about mirroring for years. And that, as far as I know, that hasn't changed. Again, I don't do any e-commerce stuff, but I can't imagine that would be any different now than it was then. Okay. It's about mirroring your structure so that you understand where, like the taxonomy, right? The way that tags and or categories push internal link juice, you can use that in a way to push that link juice to your intended targets or topics, or targets, I should say. And if e-commerce is your intended target, then you could use the blog categories to push all that topical relevance in internal link juice to those category pages, the e-com category pages. So I don't know if that makes sense or not. Yeah, and you would just set up redirects, 301 redirects from the blog category URL to the e-com category pages. Okay. And I can't give you any further, excuse me, advice on e-com stuff. Perhaps Adam?
Maybe in the future. I can't do any better than that right now. I personally like the keep it simple idea, which works great. I mean, it's a different beast when you get into something with like, you know, I don't know, a store with like 10,000 SKUs or, you know, unique variations or something. And I'm not going to attempt to try to dissect that. So I think Bradley hit the nail on the head. And if you have further follow-up questions, Ruggs, about this, we'd be happy to talk or think about them at least, and then maybe look and see if we can find some good examples. That's, I guess, the only thing I would add to this is go out. And if you know some people who run the sites, who, like, there are several people I know of who have done content and worked on the e-commerce side, go out. And if you understand who actually runs or owns these businesses, or if you just know that they're ranking well, go look at their structure, see what they're doing. How are they setting things up?
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks, guys.
See ya.